My name is Emily Carter. I am 39 years old, and I am telling you this because what happened to me can happen to anyone. 6 months after my husband died, I started working night shifts downtown. I was exhausted, grieving, and just trying to keep my life from falling apart. Every morning at the end of my shift, I ordered a rideshare to take me home. And every morning the same driver picked me up. His name was Mark. He was quiet, professional, and calm. He drove carefully, never rushed me, never asked questions I did not want to answer. After weeks of sleepless nights and emotional chaos, that quiet ride home felt like the only stable thing left in my life. Then one morning, everything changed. We turned onto my street, the same street I had lived on for years, the street where my husband and I built our life together. But Mark did not slow down. He drove straight past my house. I sat up and said, "Mark, you missed my place." He did not look at me. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. His voice stayed steady, but something in it made my stomach drop. He said, "Emily, your neighbor has been watching you. You cannot go home tonight." My heart started racing. I asked what he meant. I asked which neighbor. I told him he was scaring me. He said, "Tomorrow morning I will show you the proof, but right now I am taking you somewhere safe." In that moment, sitting in the back seat of a moving car, I realized something terrifying. The place I believed was safest might be the most dangerous place of all. Before I continue, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment below where you are watching from. I am sharing this because women everywhere need to hear it. Now let me take you back to where my life truly began to fall apart. Before all of this happened, my life was simple in the best way. My husband Daniel was my best friend. We had been married for 15 years. We were not flashy people. We liked quiet weekends, cooking at home, and talking about plans we would get to someday. Travel after retirement, maybe adoption. Growing old together in the house we bought 8 years earlier. Then one Tuesday morning, Daniel kissed me goodbye, told me he loved me, and walked out the door for work. He never came home. A heart attack. Sudden. Massive. The doctor said he probably did not feel pain. The doctor said there was nothing anyone could have done. Those words did nothing for me. After the funeral, time stopped making sense. Days blurred together. The house felt too quiet, too large, too empty. Every room held memories that hurt to touch, but I could not bring myself to leave. That house was the last place I had been truly happy. I moved through my days like a shadow. I slept poorly. I forgot things. I cried without warning. Grief does not arrive neatly. It seeps into everything. People told me I was strong. I nodded and pretended I was. But the truth was, I was barely holding myself together. I thought losing my husband was the worst thing that could ever happen to me. I believed that pain had already taken its full share. I did not yet understand how vulnerable grief can make you. And I did not know that someone had already noticed my vulnerability and decided to take advantage of it. About 2 months after the funeral, reality caught up with me. The life insurance helped, but it was not enough to cover everything long-term. The mortgage, utilities, groceries, medical bills. Grief is expensive in ways people do not talk about. I had been working part-time in medical billing, but the hours were limited and the pay was not enough. I needed something better, something stable, even if it meant sacrificing comfort and routine. That is how I ended up accepting a night shift supervisor position at a distribution center downtown. The pay was good. The hours were brutal, 10 at night until 6 in the morning, 5 nights a week. I told myself it was temporary, just until I got back on my feet. I no longer had a car. Daniel and I had only owned one. After he died, his sister needed it more than I did. 3 kids. No reliable transportation. I sold it to her for far less than it was worth because it felt like the right thing to do. That decision changed everything. Without a car, rideshares became my lifeline. Every morning after my shift, I would step outside into the cold early light and wait for a stranger to take me home. I was exhausted, emotionally drained, running on autopilot. I did not realize it then, but that version of me was exactly the kind of person predators look for. Someone tired, someone alone, someone who just wanted to get home and feel safe. Mark was not the kind of driver who tried to be memorable. He did not talk too much. He did not ask personal questions. He did not make comments about my appearance or my schedule. He simply confirmed my address, drove carefully, and wished me a good morning when we arrived. That consistency mattered more than I realized at the time. After long nights managing a warehouse floor, my nerves were shot. The quiet in Mark's car gave me space to breathe. Sometimes we talked about neutral things like traffic or weather. Sometimes I sat in silence with my eyes closed. After a few weeks, I mentioned that my husband had died. I do not know why I told him. Maybe because I was tired of pretending everything was fine. Maybe because grief makes you say things you normally keep locked away. Mark listened. He did not interrupt. He did not offer empty comfort. Then he told me his wife had passed away several years earlier. There was no dramatic conversation, no emotional exchange, just an understanding that sat quietly between us after that. What I did not know was that Mark was paying attention in ways I was not. While I was lost in my thoughts, he noticed patterns. He noticed timing. He noticed a man across the street who seemed to be watching my house a little too closely. Mark was not looking for trouble. But he was not willing to ignore it either. The neighborhood I lived in had always felt safe. Tree-lined streets, well-kept lawns, neighbors who waved and minded their own business. It was the kind of place people described as quiet and boring, and I used to think that was a good thing. The man who lived directly across from me was named Howard Blake. Mid-40s, average height. Thinning hair, nothing about him stood out. His house was a little more neglected than the others. Overgrown bushes, paint that needed attention, but nothing alarming. Before my husband died, I had only exchanged a few polite waves with him. Once he offered to help fix a fence after a storm. My husband declined. Another time he mentioned yard work. Again we said no. After the funeral, Howard came to my door with a sympathy card and flowers. He told me he was sorry for my loss, and that if I ever needed anything, I should let him know. I thanked him and closed the door. A few weeks later he knocked again. He said he noticed my gutters looked clogged. Asked if I wanted help. I told him I had it handled. He smiled and said the offer was always there. At the time I thought he was just being neighborly, maybe a little awkward, maybe lonely. Looking back now, every one of those interactions feels different. They were not random, they were calculated. He was not offering help. He was positioning himself. And while I was grieving, exhausted, and barely holding myself together, I was exactly the kind of person who did not notice what those small moments were really leading toward. For weeks my life followed the same pattern. Work through the night, ride home at sunrise, collapse into bed, repeat. And during that time I did not notice the small changes around me. A kitchen drawer slightly open when I was sure I had closed it. A picture frame angled differently than I remembered. I blamed exhaustion. I blamed grief. I told myself my mind was foggy and unreliable. I did not notice that Howard always seemed to be outside when I got home, taking out trash, checking his mailbox, standing in his driveway at 6:30 in the morning. I did not notice how his eyes followed me from the car to my front door. I did not notice how carefully he timed his movements to intersect with mine. But Mark noticed. At first he thought it was coincidence, an early riser, a bored neighbor, but something about it felt off, the repetition. The way Howard seemed more focused on my house than his own. So Mark started paying closer attention. He noticed Howard standing in an upstairs window some mornings. He noticed him watching us pull up. He noticed him lingering longer than necessary. While I was dismissing my instincts, Mark was listening to his. And that difference almost cost me everything. One Thursday morning, about 6 weeks into my new routine, my shift ended in chaos. A late shipment arrived, systems went down, tempers flared. By the time I clocked out, my body felt heavy and my mind was numb. Mark picked me up like always. I got into the back seat, thanked him, and leaned my head against the window. We had been driving for about 10 minutes when he spoke. "Emily, I need to talk to you about something." His voice was different, calm but tight, focused. I opened my eyes. "What is wrong?" "Not here," he said, "when we get closer to your place. But I need you to trust me. What I am about to do is for your safety." My heart started beating faster. "Mark, you are scaring me." "Please trust me," he said again. The rest of the drive felt longer than usual. My thoughts raced. Had there been a break-in? Was there police activity on my street? Was something wrong with my house? Then we turned onto my road. The familiar houses passed by, the same trees, the same driveways. And Mark did not slow down. He drove straight past my house. "Mark," I said sharply, "you missed my place." "I know," he replied. "Your neighbor has been watching you. You cannot go home tonight." My chest tightened. "What are you talking about? Which neighbor?" "The man across from you," he said. "Howard Blake. I have been noticing things for the past 2 weeks. And this morning I saw enough to know you are not safe." I felt dizzy. My hands started shaking. Mark took a turn away from my street and said quietly, "I am taking you somewhere safe. We will talk there, and tomorrow morning I will show you proof." In that moment I realized something terrifying. The routine I trusted had just been shattered, and the place I was desperate to get back to was no longer safe. Mark drove to a 24-hour diner a few miles away. One of those places with bright lights, vinyl booths, and the feeling that nothing bad can happen because someone is always awake. He parked the car and turned to face me. "I know this sounds unbelievable," he said. "I know you might think I am overreacting. But I promise you, Emily, I would not scare you like this without being sure." "Show me," I said. My voice was barely steady. Mark unlocked his phone and handed it to me. The photo gallery was already open. "I am going to get us a booth and some coffee," he said. "Take your time. When you are ready, come inside." He stepped out of the car, leaving me alone with his phone and a silence that felt too loud. The first photo showed my house in the early morning light. Then I saw him. Howard. He was standing in the upstairs window of his house, directly across from mine. I swiped to the next image. It was zoomed in. He was holding binoculars, pointed straight at my living room. My stomach dropped. I scrolled again. A photo of Howard at my mailbox. Another zoomed-in shot showed him sorting through my mail. Next photo. Howard walking up to my front door while the house was dark. His head turned slightly, like he was checking to see if anyone was watching. Another image showed him standing in his yard with a camera. Not a phone, a camera with a long lens. My hands started shaking as I kept scrolling. Then I saw the video. The timestamp was from that morning. Howard walked out of his house, looked around, crossed the street, and walked up to my front door. I watched in horror as he pulled a key from his pocket. My key. He unlocked my door and went inside my house. The video continued for several minutes. Then he came back out, locked the door behind him, and returned to his home like nothing had happened. My vision blurred. I dropped the phone onto the seat and opened the car door just in time to be sick in the parking lot. When I finally stumbled into the diner, Mark was waiting in a corner booth with 2 cups of coffee. I slid into the seat across from him and whispered, "He has a key to my house." Mark nodded slowly. And then he said something that made my blood run cold. "This morning I think he went upstairs. I think he may have put something inside your home." Cameras, recording devices. In that moment I understood that my house was not just being watched. It had already been violated. Mark did not let me go home. He drove me straight to a small hotel a few miles away. Nothing fancy. Clean. Quiet. Safe. He paid for the room and walked me to the door, making sure the lock worked before he left. He told me to keep the lights on, keep my phone charged, and call him if I needed anything. I nodded, but I do not remember saying much. My body was moving, but my mind was somewhere else. Inside that hotel room, everything came crashing down. I sat on the edge of the bed, fully dressed, lights blazing, heart racing at every sound from the hallway. I kept replaying the video in my head. The key. The door opening. The man walking into my home like it belonged to him. I did not sleep, not even for a minute. I searched Mark online because fear makes you question everything. His driver profile. Hundreds of 5-star reviews, years of driving, no red flags. Then I searched Howard. Divorced, IT job downtown, no criminal record. Just a normal man. And that terrified me more than anything else. Because if Mark had not been paying attention, if he had not cared enough to notice patterns and collect proof, I would have walked into my house that morning. I would have showered, changed clothes, and gone to bed, completely unaware that someone had already been inside my home. Someone who knew my schedule. Someone who had a key. and I realized something that made my chest tighten. If I had gone home that morning, I might not be here telling this story now. Morning came slowly. When the sky finally began to lighten, I felt like I had aged years overnight. At 7 sharp, I called Mark. He answered immediately and told me he was on his way. We drove to the police station in silence. I kept my hands folded in my lap because they would not stop shaking. At the front desk, we asked to speak to someone about stalking and unlawful entry. We were taken to a small interview room where a detective named Laura Mitchell introduced herself. She had calm eyes and a steady voice, the kind that made you feel like she had seen worse and survived it. Mark explained everything. Slowly. Clearly, he showed her the photos and videos on his phone, walking her through the timeline of what he had noticed and when. Detective Mitchell watched without interrupting. When she saw the video of Howard unlocking my door with a key, her expression changed. She excused herself and returned with another officer. "Emily," she said carefully, "this is extremely serious. This is criminal stalking, unlawful entry, and illegal surveillance. Based on what we are seeing, there is a strong possibility this behavior was escalating." I swallowed hard and told her what Mark suspected, that Howard might have installed cameras inside my home. Her jaw tightened. "You cannot return to that house," she said, "not until we search it. As of now, your home is considered a potential crime scene." They moved quickly after that. Warrants were requested. Officers were dispatched to both houses. As I sat there in that small room, I realized something that made my stomach turn. The place I had been rushing toward every morning was not a refuge. It had been a trap. I saw him again the next morning. The courtroom was small and quiet, the kind of place where every sound feels louder than it should. Mark sat beside me, close enough that I could feel his presence without looking at him. Then Howard Blake was brought in. He looked smaller than I remembered. Thinner, less ordinary. He wore an orange jumpsuit and handcuffs, and for a moment I almost did not recognize the man who had lived across from me for years. When his eyes found mine, I expected something. Fear, shame, regret. There was nothing. Just a blank stare that made my skin crawl. The judge began reading the charges: stalking, unlawful entry, illegal surveillance. Each word felt heavy, like it belonged to someone else's life, not mine. When the judge asked if anyone wished to speak, I stood up before I could talk myself out of it. My legs were shaking, but my voice was steady. I told the court that he had watched me grieve my husband, that he had entered my home without permission, that he had treated my private life like something he was entitled to consume. I told him he did not break me. I told him he was only standing there because someone noticed what he was doing and refused to stay silent. Howard never looked away, but something shifted in me as I sat back down. For the first time since my husband died, I felt something solid return. Not anger. Control. And that mattered more than I ever expected. The weeks that followed were some of the hardest of my life. I learned details I wish I could forget. Cameras hidden inside my home. Footage recorded in rooms where I should have been completely safe. Patterns documented, notes written, plans forming. The police told me it was unlikely I would ever feel comfortable in that house again. They were right. Every room felt contaminated. Every corner felt watched. The bedroom where I had cried for my husband no longer felt private. The bathroom where I started and ended every day no longer felt mine. So I sold the house. The house Daniel and I chose together. The house where we planned our future. The house I thought I would grow old in. Letting it go felt like losing him all over again. I started therapy because I could not function without it. I jumped at sounds. I checked mirrors. I searched rooms for hidden lenses. Safety no longer felt natural. It felt like something I had to build from scratch. People told me I was strong. But surviving something like this is not about strength. It is about paying a price you never agreed to pay and learning how to live anyway. And I was only beginning to understand what survival would cost me. Recovery did not happen all at once. Some days I felt almost normal. Other days I could not leave my apartment without checking the hallway twice. Healing came in uneven steps, forward and back, never in a straight line. What surprised me was what happened after the worst of the fear settled. I realized I did not want what happened to me to end with me. The detective connected me with a local support group for stalking victims. I went to my first meeting shaking. convinced I would not be able to speak. But when I listened to other women share their stories, I understood something powerful. I was not alone, and neither were they. I started helping in small ways, sharing what I had learned about hidden cameras, explaining how predators escalate slowly, teaching women how to trust that quiet feeling in their chest that says something is wrong. Mark stayed in my life too, not as a hero or a savior, but as a steady presence. Coffee conversations, check-in messages, proof that some people notice and choose to care. Helping others did not erase what happened to me.